tell by the image on the front of the Mass program that today's readings are going to be about lepers and leprosy on this 6th Sunday of Ordinary Time. The first reading comes from the book of Leviticus. Where's the book of Leviticus in the Bible? Leviticus is part of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books. It's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. So it's the third book of the Bible. And in the third book of the Bible, there are all sorts of laws and rules. And in Leviticus chapters 13 to 15, we have 3 chapters on people who are unclean. People who have things that the rest of us could catch. Follow me? And so if someone has something like leprosy, we got to be careful, because if we're not careful, all of us could get leprosy. You follow me? So if someone gets leprosy, if Becky gets leprosy, we love Becky, but we can't have Becky here because then we're at risk of getting leprosy. Oh, so what are we going to do with Becky? Becky, out of here. And so back in that age, oh, there are some sympathetic people here like, oh no, not Becky. Right? Pick someone else. Right? She's such a good person. But in the ancient world, think about it for a moment. If anything appeared on your skin that looked like it could be leprosy, ooh, look at that pimple. Right? You had to go to the priest, and the priest had to look at it and determine, is it safe to allow you to be with us? Or do you have to get out until you're healed? And so any type of psoriasis or eczema or acne or boils or rashes, you went to the priest, and the priest was the one who decided, can you stay? Is it safe for you to stay? Or do you have to go? With lepers then, where did they go? They went outside the city. You can't live with us here in the city because there's a risk that we could all catch your leprosy. And so they built themselves places to stay outside the city, or they stayed in caves. And they dressed differently. They tore their clothes so that we would know when we got close to them, ooh, she's wearing torn clothes. What does that mean? Stay away from her. And often in the Middle Ages, they would wear a bell around their neck, and they would ring a bell, and they would shout, unclean, unclean, so that when we were heading in Becky's direction, she'd ring her bell and say, unclean, and we'd say, ooh, stay away from her. Right? So in today's first reading, then, we have how it is that anyone who has a scab, or a puzzle, or a blotch on the skin, what do you have to do? Go see a priest to make sure that you're okay. And it's the priests who are going to decide whether you're clean or whether you're unclean. It says in the 5th last line, they shall keep their garments rent, torn, right? And their heads bare. They're not going to cover their heads. And they'll muffle their beards, and they'll cry out, unclean, unclean. And the last line, they shall dwell apart so that none of us get what they have. Imagine the social isolation. You find something on your skin one day that could be a rash. You go to the priest tells you you're out of the city. That's isolation. Which is why today's gospel is so important if we want to turn to the gospel quickly. In today's gospel, according to Mark, this leper, instead of saying unclean, unclean, and staying apart, what does he do? The first line says that a leper came to Jesus. That was a no-no. Follow me? He crossed the line. Lepers were supposed to stand back and apart and shout, unclean, unclean. And instead, he heard about this guy named Jesus. And his faith told him that Jesus could heal him. He had faith. And so he came to Jesus and said, Lord, you can make me clean. We see in there in the 5th line, Jesus heals him of his leprosy, which is a great thing because now he can come back into the city, right? Jesus says to him in line 7, see that you tell no one. In the Gospel of Mark, we often call this the Messianic Secret. How was that Jesus healed people and then said, shh, don't tell anyone what I did, right? A way of explaining why it is that it took 30 years for the gospel to be written, because people were wondering, well, why haven't we told these stories before? Because Jesus told us not to tell. We call it the Messianic Secret. Jesus told him not to tell anyone. Did he not tell anyone? What happens in the gospel? We see there in the fourth last line, the man went away and began to what? To publicize the whole matter. So that now Jesus can no longer openly enter towns. How interesting. Now who becomes the outcast? Jesus. He has to stay in deserted places because so many people want a part of the action. They want to be healed. Brothers and sisters, as we celebrate this sixth Sunday of Lent, let's reflect on how it is that we need Christ's healing too. And during this Mass, let's invite Christ into our lives to heal us as well.